The wind howled across the cold alien landscape, whipping snowflakes through the air like blades slicing through the gray sky. The vast expanse stretched endlessly, where the peaks of eternal snow-capped mountains were shrouded in a storm's haze. Violent winds pushed the shuttle downward faster, forcing it to struggle to maintain a steady descent. A thin layer of ice covered everything, and the distant star's light was too faint to allow Will Watson to make anything out clearly. The shuttle screeched like a dying beast, its metal groaning in the eerie silence of space. The craft's control systems were failing, and error signals blinked continuously on the control panel. The lights from the screens flickered out, leaving only one weakly blinking light, the last sign of life inside the cockpit. Commander Will Watson, gritting his teeth, gripping the controls tightly, "Come on, just a little longer." The craft crashed violently, slamming into the thick snow-covered ground. The impact threw Will into his restraints, making the world spin around him. When he regained consciousness, he found himself hanging upside down, his vision blurry, blood trickling down from a gash on his forehead. The cockpit window had cracked, but somehow it held together, offering a glimpse of the desolate snowy world outside. Will Watson, sighing, checking his suit, well, that could have gone better. He opened the shuttle door and stepped out. The cold immediately hit him, an oppressive chill that seemed to freeze everything in its path. The thick, white snow covered the ground, and the winds howled so fiercely that they nearly knocked his helmet off. His suit's tactical display blinked to life, showing a shelter a few kilometers away, but the temperature had dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. The world was so cold that it seemed as though all life had been frozen in silence. Will trudged through the snow, feeling the biting wind cut through his armor. Each step felt like it stretched the fragile thread of life he had in this alien world. The vast, silent expanse was filled only with snow and winds like sharp blades. Yet, something in the stillness made Will stop, a strange sense that someone or something was watching him from behind. A massive shadow moved across his peripheral vision. It was a towering creature, with vibrant orange skin like the color of a sunset and long hair that caught the light like copper. She wasn't just a warrior, she was the queen of the Solarian Empire. She stepped from the darkness of the alien forest, moving without a sound, as if she had always existed in this strange space. Her weapon was a fusion of a long spear and a plasma rifle, a device that could reduce anything to ash with the flick of a finger. Her steps rang out like the slicing of metal through the quiet air, each stride powerful and regal, making the very atmosphere around them seem unsettled and terrified. Will Watson, calmly, though his heart raced, "Hello there. I don't suppose you're interested in a friendly chat." She stood tall, her golden eyes locked on Will, as if she wanted to set everything in her gaze ablaze. Her voice came out like an enchanting spell, alluring yet threatening. "Aurelia, you are either very brave or very foolish to enter the sovereign territory of the Solarian Empire, human." Will remained unshaken, even as her gaze fixed on him, a strange, cold curiosity flickering across the Queen's face. Will Watson, smiling confidently, still gripping his weapon, "I'm just lost, Your Majesty. Commander Will Watson at your service." "And you are?" She tilted her head slightly, her sharp eyes seeming to pierce through every secret of his, and then her voice turned cold, full of authority. "Aurelia, I am Queen Aurelia of the Solarian Empire. And you are my prisoner." Her words were like a declaration of war. Will realized that he had entered a world unlike anything he had ever known. This queen, with her cold elegance and power, was not a foe to be taken lightly. Yet in that moment, amidst the infinite cold and the storm that was beginning to intensify, there was something strange, compelling him not to back down. The wind howled, fierce as a wild beast in the night. Snow swirled in the air, spiraling around them like a fierce blizzard. In the vast expanse, where only the sound of the wind blew, Will Watson stood firm. The chilling atmosphere enveloped him, making it feel as though everything was being driven into absolute stillness. The cold winds could tear anyone apart, yet this strange silence only made the anticipation of an impending battle or a significant event more intense. Aurelia stood facing Will, her weapon still aimed directly at his chest, her yellow eyes glowing like light piercing the darkness, sharp and cold. She was much taller than him, standing firm like a war goddess looking down at her prey. Will Watson, smiling confidently, though his heart raced, "I have to admit, I was hoping for shelter, not this situation." Aurelia subtly smirked, her eyes narrowing as though studying Will from head to toe. "Aurelia, you think you can charm your way out of this situation?" Will Watson, grinning, "That's called human charm, Your Majesty." Will's smile wasn't just playful, it was a flicker of light in the dark. For him, this wasn't just a fight for survival, but an opportunity to challenge himself, to learn what he didn't know about this place, and about himself. The feeling of being human, not just a soldier in this situation, began to ignite within him. The surroundings grew even harsher. The snowstorm grew stronger, like the wrath of nature, as gusts of wind etched strange marks on the snow-covered ground. The cold penetrated deep into his bones, making everything seem unbearable. Will quickly realized that if they didn't find shelter soon, they wouldn't survive in this environment. And in that moment, with the cleverness and confidence typical of humanity, Will decided to convince the alien queen. "Will Watson," softly, but firmly, "Well, Your Majesty, we can both die here, or you could let me into your shelter so we don't have to fight against this storm. Surely, you don't want to die in this deadly cold, do you?" Aurelia stared at him for a long time, as if considering. After a long silence, she lowered her weapon and turned away. Will silently followed her, though he was pleased inside, yet careful not to show it. Together, they ventured through the growing cold and worsening storm. Aurelia led Will through the shadowy halls of a massive structure hidden underground, taking him to a large room. The air inside was warm, but there was an eerie feeling, as though this place held secrets both she and Will had yet to uncover. The walls were made from an unidentifiable material, shimmering in the strange light, almost as if they generated their own source of illumination. The devices around them, though silent, emitted a mysterious hum, as if communicating in ways unknown. Will removed his helmet, but his combat suit continued to protect him from the extreme cold of this alien world. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings, while the suit began scanning Aurelia's physiological traits. Will Watson, whispering, observing the outpost, "This place doesn't look like anything I've ever seen." Aurelia moved closer, her cold gaze unchanged, but there seemed to be a hint of curiosity beginning to glimmer in her golden eyes. "Aurelia, you humans are truly strange. Not what I expected." Will Watson, smiling lightly, "Curiosity is kind of our thing, Your Majesty." Will continued to study the devices around them, his eyes gliding over a screen displaying Aurelia's physiological data. The suit's system was scanning and analyzing her body, each biological signal a floating question about undiscovered possibilities. These data showed a stark contrast between them. Her body temperature was significantly higher than a human's, her heartbeat followed a different rhythm, and her pheromone levels spiked when she was near Will. Will Watson, whispering, reviewing the data, "You're unlike anyone I've ever met." Aurelia looked at Will, her gaze like a piercing beam cutting through the darkness, filled with power and authority. "Aurelia, you're scanning me, aren't you? Still, we do have significant differences." But you are more interesting than I imagined." A strange feeling spread once again through the air. The tension between them was still present, but there was also a growing curiosity in both of them. The differences between their species weren't just physical, they were a contrast in how they perceived and understood the world. Would these differences create a new understanding, or would they simply remain an insurmountable barrier? Still, they continued to converse. What seemed like innocent words were, in this charged atmosphere, like unsolved riddles hanging in the air. An unexpected rumble echoed, like a small earthquake in the quiet of the outpost. The ground beneath their feet shook violently, as if it were resisting their presence. Strange flashes of light blinked from the surrounding devices, signaling an energy disruption. A column of black smoke rose from parts of the outpost, while strong winds and dust stormed into the closed space. Aurelia quickly spun around, gripping her weapon tightly, while Will, following his combat instincts, rushed toward her. He used his body to shield her, and their fall sent both of them tumbling into a heap of broken equipment and tangled wires. Emergency lights flared to life, casting a harsh yellow glow that illuminated their faces. In that moment, amidst the chaos, they locked eyes, two opposing gazes filled with understanding, as though the world around them had melted into tiny fragments. Will Watson, breathing heavily, forcing a strained chuckle, "Looks like we'll have time to discuss interspecies relations after all." They lay on top of each other in an undignified heap, but the strange tension between them was undeniable. In the smoke-filled, dusty air, emotions that neither could fully comprehend intermingled. Aurelia, with a hint of amusement, her bright golden eyes flashing with a strange glint, "You really think I'd be interested in that?" Will Watson, smirking, his voice playful, "Well, I was hoping for a better conversation, but this works too." In the dark space, with the wind howling outside and the emergency lights flickering, an odd feeling pervaded the air. They were beings from two entirely different worlds, thrown into a perilous situation, but unable to ignore the strange emotions neither had ever experienced before. The tremors slowly subsided, but the atmosphere inside the outpost remained eerily still. The surrounding devices continued to hum softly, as though they were trying to maintain life in a world that had fallen into chaos. Will and Aurelia were both exhausted after the explosion, but they couldn't leave immediately. The station's systems were severely damaged, and they were forced to wait until they could continue their journey. While they rested, Will couldn't stop monitoring and analyzing Aurelia's physiological data through his suit. The numbers and graphs kept fluctuating, but one particular reading caught his attention. Aurelia's body temperature was changing abnormally. These readings didn't match any physiological model he had ever studied. Will Watson, looking at the screen, his voice tinged with concern, "Aurelia, I've been scanning your vitals, and there's something very strange going on." Aurelia glanced at him, her golden eyes flashing with suspicion. She stood up, leaning against the cold wall of the outpost, as though trying to steady herself amidst the chaos. She stared at Will, waiting for him to explain further. "Will Watson, seriously, studying the scan data, you're pregnant." Aurelia froze, her eyes widening with disbelief. It was as if the words he'd just spoken were too much to comprehend. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. A sense of shock rippled through her, as her body began to react to information she couldn't explain. "Aurelia," her voice low, filled with doubt, "impossible. Our species can't be compatible, this can't be." Will didn't respond immediately. He kept his eyes locked on the screen, trying to make sense of the findings. Every number, every biological signal showed a bizarre change, a connection neither of their species had ever anticipated. Will Watson, with a small smile, "Seems like someone forgot to tell our DNA about this." The air in the outpost grew thick, as if it were enveloping them in a dense, oppressive atmosphere. Every word, every glance between them was filled with disbelief. A new world was unfolding, not just for Will and Aurelia but for both species they represented. Everything around them was changing by the second, the tension rising like a taut string, making the atmosphere in the outpost thick with pressure. Aurelia's body was reacting to the unimaginable physiological changes, pain and shifts within her that she could no longer control, but her eyes remained sharp and full of determination. The data from Will's suit blinked continuously, signaling concerning changes. All the readings pointed to the fact that she couldn't wait much longer to face the consequences. They had to leave before things turned worse. Aurelia, in a low, but resolute voice, we need to return to the Empire. My people cannot find out about this, not yet. Will Watson, decisively, eyes filled with determination. I'm not leaving you, Aurelia. We'll figure this out. The tension between their two species, humans and Solarians, was escalating. Communications systems had been cut off, but attack signals from the Solarian military were starting to spread, like cracks in an empire falling apart. Will felt his heart beat quicken as he faced not just an alien enemy, but also his own kind. Everywhere, on the tactical displays, the images of warships, colossal vessels casting shadows over the sky, were preparing for battle. Their evolution had reached a point where they could no longer avoid the unpredictable truth. They could no longer run from the things they couldn't foresee. High above in the sky, where human and Solarian forces were preparing for a life-or-death battle, Will returned to his ship, donned in his combat suit, and ready for the fight. The air around him felt as though it could explode at any moment. The atmosphere was thick with the flashes of energy cannons from both sides. The sounds of spacecraft colliding, plasma beams streaking through space, made every moment feel like an unstoppable force of war. Aurelia, though heavily pregnant, couldn't stop commanding. Her voice crackled over the comms, a voice of unwavering authority. Aurelia, on the comms, voice filled with amusement, you humans and your endless tricks. I'm starting to enjoy this. Despite the danger and the intensity of the battle, something miraculous began to happen. Aurelia, witnessing the battle unfold, suddenly felt a sharp pain. But this was no ordinary pain. It was the beginning of labor. She was giving birth to their child. A hybrid child born of both human and Solarian emerged as a glowing creature, its skin radiant, light flowing from within it, as if the universe was witnessing a turning point in history. The air seemed to grow heavy and suffocating. This child, symbolizing the harmony between two species, was born amidst a bloody battle, but it also brought with it a new light, a hope for the future of both their worlds. After the battle, everything slowly began to calm down. The atmosphere in the diplomatic chamber was heavy, with both human and Solarian diplomats' eyes focused on the newborn child. Its presence was a signal of change for both species. Every gaze was filled with doubt, but also with hope, a new opportunity, a bridge between two civilizations that had once seemed incompatible. Aurelia, in a deep, proud voice, our child represents the next step in evolution. Will Watson, smiling lightly, looking at their child, and it all started because I crashed on her planet. Laughs. Their child, with extraordinary power and the ability to glow like a small star, became the symbol of a new world unfolding. The diplomats' views slowly shifted, from skepticism to acceptance. This wasn't just a victory in war, but a victory of love and the union between two species once thought impossible to reconcile.